Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today we're going to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation together. First, I'm going to spend some time to see if there's any questions based on our talk on Sunday, which was about chapter 13, cultivating healthy mental states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. We also talked about generosity as well. So I'd like to give all of you an opportunity to ask any questions that may have came up since that talk. And then we're going to go into meditation where Max is going to actually help out and do a talk on breathing mindfulness meditation and then guide all of us in breathing mindfulness meditation for today. So I would like to welcome all of you to our live stream. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or you're in the Zoom virtual classroom, or you might even be listening to this on our podcast. If you have questions as we go throughout our session, you're welcome to type those into the comment section of Facebook, YouTube, or our Zoom virtual classroom. And the folks in Zoom, you also have the opportunity to raise your hand electronically and ask any questions or follow-up questions. When Max is actually teaching, I'll be switching over to moderating. So anybody who's in our various platforms that would normally be asking questions and Max would be relaying those to me, I'm going to be doing that for Max today when he's teaching meditation. So welcome, really pleased that you're here and would like to see what questions you guys have based on chapter 13, cultivating healthy mental states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, as well as generosity, which isn't really part of those Brahma Viharas that we talked about, but which is a fifth kind of aspect of practice that is needed in order to progress on this path to enlightenment. So, any and all questions related to that or anything else that we've been discussing, you're welcome to ask those right now.
Okay, so we have no questions in at the moment, David.
Okay, then what
I've
we'll
just asked the room, so we could just leave it a minute or two, see. But at the moment, it looks like no questions.
Okay. Yeah. So what we'll do then is we'll just switch over where Max will now take on the class and teach breathing mindfulness meditation and then lead us in breathing mindfulness meditation. So I'll go ahead and turn things over to Max.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, David. Would you kindly make me a co-host and I'll share my slides?
Sure.
Okay, so welcome in everybody and welcome to a bit of role reversal. It looks like I'm going to be teaching the meditation today whilst David is kindly moderating and taking your questions. So if at any point you do have any questions, feel free just to drop those in the chat box in Zoom or Facebook or wherever you happen to be. Today we're going to be practicing breathing mindfulness meditation. And I thought I would take today as an opportunity to really bring it back to basics, really try and get to the root of why meditate, really what are the benefits of meditation, why do we meditate, how do we meditate, and what actually is meditation from the perspective of Buddha's teachings. Because at this point, people from all walks of life are practicing meditation. People across the world, many of which have not come across Buddha's teachings or aware of Buddha's teachings. I know that when I first started meditation, I was really doing it as a way to try and find a bit of peace, de-stress, as a way to help me with my daily life. And at the time, I was just starting out in building a online business. And I had an appointment with a business coach, believe it or not, who recommended meditation to me. And I guess you might have noticed that I was a bit hyperactive or something at the time, very eager, and probably thought I could use some help in bringing my mind back to the middle. But like I'm sure many of you have glimpsed, that beyond simply seeing meditation as this kind of auxiliary tool to help us with daily life, there is a lot more to it. It really has the potential to completely bring the mind to a place of peace in a way that all our efforts in daily life and all this trying to make things happen through building ourselves up and building these businesses and working really hard in our careers, all these things maybe can't, at least not permanently. So today we're really going to look at meditation from the perspective of Buddha's teachings. And my aim is that it inspires you to really get down to meditation. If you haven't started it already, this is a great time to try it out. If you are meditating, I hope it just bolsters your resolve to meditate more consistently, maybe even increase your meditation to 2 times or 3 times a day, if you're not already. So, why meditate? Well, really what we're doing when we meditate is we are purifying the mind. The Buddha identified that the primary problem with the mind is this craving, desire, attachment, this mental longing for something with a strong eagerness. And this is really the source of all of our challenges, all of our discontent mind states, whether it's fear or anger or loneliness, shyness, boredom. These things all have their origin in craving, desire, attachment. And what we often see these days is a meditation ascribed to particular kinds of mental ailments. So we might see a meditation style for anxiety. We might see a meditation style for shyness, and so on. But really what the Buddha's saying here is that all of these mind states ultimately have the same root cause. And so what we're doing when we meditate is we're really getting to the root of the problem. Today we're going to be practicing breathing mindfulness meditation, which is one of only 2 styles of meditation that the Buddha taught that every person on this path would need in order to completely liberate the mind and attain enlightenment. So what we're really doing with breathing mindfulness meditation is we are eliminating this craving, this desire, attachment. And at the same time, of course, we are cultivating mindfulness and concentration. So awareness of mind, which we can then use to notice when the mind has deviated into a discontent mind state, when it's gone off into chasing pleasant feelings, or when it's stuck in painful feelings. Mindfulness is our propensity to notice that so that we can ultimately do something about it. And so by purifying the mind, by cultivating mindfulness, this then gives us the ability to carry that out into daily life. And then with mindfulness in daily life, we can continue to make good, wholesome decisions as we go about our day that ultimately just feeds back into our meditation and allows us to achieve better results in our meditation. So what do we actually mean by purifying the mind? Well, we have a definition in the book, Developing a Life Practice, which I think explains exactly what meditation is and what we mean by it very well. We think of meditation as a technique actively used to train the mind to eliminate or cultivate various qualities of the mind during dedicated, independent, purposeful training sessions. So what this means is that, for example, when we're exercising, we're out jogging, or maybe we're gardening, whilst these things can be good for the mind, according to this definition, they're not meditation, technically. So sometimes you might hear people say, oh, I'm going to go for a jog and meditate, or I'm going to go for a hike and meditate. And one can certainly practice mindfulness during these activities. But from the perspective of Buddha's teachings, these things would not be considered meditation because they're not independent, purposeful training sessions. You haven't completely devoted yourself in those moments to training the mind. You're most likely doing more than one thing at once. There's going to be a lot more potential distractions, potential ways for the mind to get caught up. And during those activities, we're not proactively bringing the mind to an object in order to cultivate mindfulness and to eliminate craving. And likewise, if we're practicing mindfulness in daily life and we're practicing other aspects of the path in daily life, so maybe we're practicing generosity, perhaps we are practicing loving kindness with our speech. Again, these are absolutely invaluable parts of the path, and one would not be able to completely liberate the mind without these things. But they would not be considered meditation under this definition because, again, they're not dedicated, purposeful training sessions for the mind. The beauty of meditation is that it brings together the entire path in one activity. And so we need this aspect of the path in order to really get ahead in our practice and move the mind in the direction of liberation, of enlightenment. Because all these other things we do in daily life, they're essential too, but we need this dedicated, purposeful time to really purify the mind. And so with that said, on this next slide, I'd like to go into a bit more detail on really what is meditation, and what are we doing, and why does this help? As I just said, meditation is the heart of practice of the Buddha's teachings, because during meditation, we are in effect putting together the whole set of Buddha's teachings in one simple activity. So the Buddha's teachings can actually be divided down into three main areas. You can think of these as the cornerstones of practice. And these three areas, they all interlink, they all support each other, but without any one of them, you certainly wouldn't be making significant progress on this path. So these three areas are wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And so you can also think of these as, so wisdom is knowing what is right and wholesome and coming to see that truth. Moral conduct can also be thought of as doing what is right and wholesome. And mental discipline can be thought of as training in our ability to do what we know to be wholesome. So during meditation, we are practicing all three of these. And these three key cornerstones can be divided down further into 8 steps known as the Eightfold Path, which I know that many of you are already familiar with. So for example, by practicing wisdom, we're first of all taking responsibility for our own mind. So this is essentially what's known as right view. With right view, we're accepting that there is discontentedness here. This mind is experiencing painful feelings, it's experiencing pleasant feelings, and it's experiencing feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. And with right view, we know that whatever we do, we're not going to be able to change the whole world to meet our preferences. Probably not even for a moment. And even if we could do it for a moment, we couldn't be able to do it permanently. So we know that it's our own craving that is causing this discontent mind. And therefore, we know that we have the ability to actually do something about it. Because changing the world would be impossible. So therefore, we know that it's our mind that is the issue that needs to be resolved, and that we actually have the capacity to resolve. So with right view, we're really taking responsibility for our mind, and the simple act of sitting down to meditate is really an act of responsibility and saying, okay, I'm going to look into this, I'm going to do something about this, and in doing that, I'm going to improve the state of my own mind and therefore improve my decisions and the impact that I have on other people and the wider world. Also within wisdom, we're practicing right intention, which is the intention of harmlessness. This can very simply be thought of as the understanding that wholesome intentions, speech, and actions will always produce wholesome results without exception. It is impossible to produce an unwholesome result with a wholesome intention. And likewise, any kind of unwholesome intention, speech, or action will always produce unwholesome results, even if it's not obvious at first. But when we reflect on this and pay attention, we can see that this is always true. We may do something unwholesome and get what we want as a result, and there may be pleasant feelings associated with that. But if we take a step back and look at the whole picture, we can see that that is going to cause discontentedness now and in the future down the line. So with right intention, we're making a stand and saying, I'm going to do what is wholesome, and that's going to produce benefits for me, others, and the wider world. Moving into moral conduct, this refers to our speech, our actions, and also our livelihood. Well, these are essentially met by default with meditation, because when we sit down and meditate, we're not saying anything, we're not really doing anything, we're not committing any kind of bodily act other than just breathing, and we're not performing any kind of livelihood. So simply by not doing harm, we're not putting out unwholesomeness into the world or experiencing the results of doing that. So this is essentially just done by virtue of not moving and just being peaceful for however long we meditate. But lastly, we're practicing mental discipline. And if meditation is the heart of our life practice, mental discipline is kind of the heart of meditation. This is really where the proactivity comes in. Because when we meditate, we are deliberately moving the mind in a certain direction. We're practicing what's known as right efforts to abandon the unwholesome mind state of craving and to cultivate wholesome qualities such as mindfulness. Now, today we're going to be practicing breathing mindfulness meditation, as I mentioned. There is one other style of meditation that every person would need in order to completely liberate the mind, and that is loving kindness meditation. And the same thing applies with loving kindness meditation, because here what we'll be looking to do is use right effort to abandon ill will, anger, hatred, this aversion that exists in the unenlightened mind. And we'd be applying effort to cultivate the wholesome qualities of loving kindness. So in breathing mindfulness meditation, we're abandoning craving and cultivating mindfulness and concentration. With loving kindness meditation, we would be abandoning ill will and we would be cultivating loving kindness. So back to breathing mindfulness, what we're doing here is we are practicing right effort. We're also practicing right mindfulness because we're training our ability to notice what's going on. And with that, we're able to more quickly spot when the mind is deviating, when it's becoming discontent, and when it's perhaps at risk of making some decisions that will produce an unwholesome result in daily life that's not going to work in our favor or might be harmful to other people. Now, all of this culminates in the final step, which is right concentration. This is really a benefit of practicing everything else that I've just discussed. Concentration can be thought of really as the ability to choose an object of focus. And this is really where freedom is found, because without concentration, we may feel like we've got plenty of freedom because we can do whatever we want. You know, we can eat whatever we like, we can go wherever we like, we can drink and do all these kinds of things. But essentially, this is actually more like bondage because we're not really in control of the mind. We're pursuing impulse after impulse after impulse. However, if we are applying concentration, the mind can be truly free because then it can be satisfied with what is. It doesn't need some external object in order to be satisfied. And so with concentration, we're far more able to actually choose what we're doing, choose what we're focusing on. And through that, we can make better decisions in daily life, which just feeds back into meditation. Because the better decisions we make in daily life, the more positive results that's going to produce, the more clear and consistent our meditation is going to be. And likewise, the more beneficial our meditation becomes, the more able we then become to carry that out into daily life. And before we know it, practicing right intention is easy. We have absolutely no intention to do harm to anyone else. Practicing right speech becomes easy. We have just no desire to lie, to interrupt, to speak harshly, or to speak without purpose. And this just follows through into action and livelihood as well. So you can see how by bringing this all together in this one simple act of meditation, this is really how we can accelerate our progress on the path. But of course, it's not about trying to push forward. It's, if anything, meditation is the one thing that I think most of us do in life where we're not trying to make something happen. We're not doing it with the expectation of some kind of result. We're really putting in place the conditions for this process to unfold in its own time. And what you can find in meditation is that if you try really, really hard, it doesn't actually produce the best results. But likewise, if we just become slack and sit back and put in no effort because we're not practicing right effort, then likewise, the meditation doesn't produce the best results. So it's really about finding that middle way. You know, the Buddha was always talking about finding the middle way. And this is a principle that can really be applied to everything we do in life. You know, essentially, we're always trying to find this middle way in everything that we do. And with meditation, in terms of the effort we put into it, this is where we want to be. Not trying too hard so that it becomes tense, and likewise not becoming slack and just allowing things to go off in any particular direction. Meditation is essentially about giving yourself a green light to give the mind exactly what it needs right now. And that's always going to be changing. No two moments will ever be the same. And no two meditations will ever be the same. So with that said, I'd like to pause right here and see if anyone has any questions before we move into meditation.
I have a question for you, Max.
Okay.
You mentioned that if there's wholesome intentions, then there'll be a wholesome result. What if we have wholesome intentions, but there's unwholesome speech? What will the result be?
So if we have wholesome intentions, but we're speaking, say, at the wrong time, or what we're saying isn't true, or we're speaking harshly, then this will produce an unwholesome result.
Okay. Thank you for that. We have no more questions at this time.
Okay, good. Okay, good to know. Alrighty then, so I'd like now just to give you some brief instructions on how to meditate, and I'll be guiding you through this today. But there'll be plenty of periods of silence for you to proceed in your own way. So some guidance from Gotama Buddha. He said that mindfulness of breathing should be developed to cut off thoughts. So what we're doing when we meditate is we are bringing our attention back to an object of focus, and we're going to be using the breath because it's very consistent and it's always with us as long as we're alive. So what he's saying here is, as the mind wanders, because it's going to want to wander off into the future, it's going to want to wander off into the past, various ideas, perceptions, it might be looking forward to something, or it might have some kind of fear or anxiety. It might be dwelling in pleasant memories, or it might be churning over something that happened in the past, unable to let it go. No matter what it is, no matter how important it seems, nothing's more important than training the mind to let go. So bring the attention back to the breath by cutting off the thoughts. Essentially what he's saying here is let go of the thoughts. He's not saying try to stop thoughts, because we need thoughts. There'll always be thoughts. However, in finding the middle, we need to be able to control the mind and know when to let go of the thoughts. So as we're going about our day in daily life, we don't want to be getting hung up on thoughts beyond the point of it being useful, beyond the point of making a decision on that and then letting it go. So given that we're putting together a dedicated, independent, purposeful training session for the mind, where the intention with this moment is to train our ability to let it go, the only thing we need to do is cut off that thought, bring it back to the breath. And there's going to be thoughts that will seem so tempting and so important. Just cut it off. Doesn't matter what it is, just cut it off. And the more you do this over the time, you'll find that the easier this becomes, and the less these thoughts based out of craving tend to appear. So it's like chopping back weeds. It's going to take a few attempts, but the more you do it over time, the less these things will tend to grow in the first place. And so when we're focused on the breath, I'd recommend bringing your attention to the sensation of the breath moving through the nose. You can also focus on the sound of the breath. It doesn't really matter. It just matters that you have something that is here in the present moment that you can fix the mind onto. Secondly, I'm going to talk about posture. So I tend to use the seated position on the floor. What's important here is just that the lower body is relaxed. You don't want the body to be tense in any way, because we're training the mind, we're not looking to train the body. But at the same time, you don't want the body to be too luxurious and leaning back, because that tends to make the mind a bit sluggish. There are 4 positions we can use for breathing mindfulness meditation. So in addition to seated, the Buddha also taught standing position, lying position, and walking meditation. Now, all 4 of these positions can be very useful as a way to bring the mind to the middle and maintain a practice no matter what's going on. So, for example, if the mind is a little bit more sluggish than usual, we can use something like standing meditation just to exert the mind slightly. Or if we'd like to extend a seated meditation session and we're finding seated position a bit uncomfortable, we can then progress into standing or walking, something like this. Likewise, I actually like to use lying meditation if the mind is a bit too busy. I find that can be a way to help slow the mind down. But of course, another way to deal with craving sometimes is to fulfill it. And if we find the mind is just really racing, really busy, one of the ways to let that go can be walking meditation. Because if you try and sit down and the mind's just racing, it can be like just mind's hitting a brick wall. No matter what you do, it just does not want to sit. So we can still, in these situations, meditate by changing position. So again, we want the body to be attentive and relaxed, but not tense and not luxurious. So that's the middle way here. And lastly, just before we proceed into meditation, a tip I'd like to share is, when it comes to effort in meditation, again, we want to be finding the middle. I know that sometimes in the past I had a tendency to try a bit too hard in meditation. And remember, we're not trying to make anything happen here. This is a process that will unfold in its own time. So something you might want to try today is, if you find the mind is just becoming a bit too tense and trying a bit too hard, just consciously let go of that effort. Just let it go, it's fine. It doesn't matter how this goes. Things will unfold in their own time. Just try not to focus too hard. But likewise, if you find the mind is just feeling a bit slack, just exert yourself slightly and see if you can bring the mind to the middle and bring that attention back to the breath. So those are my instructions for meditation. I'd like to pause here again and see if there are any more questions.
We don't have any questions, Max, but we have an encouraging comment from Manal. She says that the chopping back the weeds was a great analogy.
Good. Yeah, glad it helped. I like this analogy because it reminds me that what we're doing here is we're cultivating our minds. We're not trying to make our mind a certain way, because nothing can be built and made a certain way permanently in this world, right? Everything is impermanent. So when we're training the mind, it's better, I think, to think of it almost like a garden, right? So we're looking to grow some nice fruits and vegetables, and we know this is going to take time. And we know that by setting the right conditions, planting them in the right place, giving them water every day, maybe giving them a bit of plant food, but then just sitting back and allowing it to happen, that's how you grow good vegetables, right? And also, of course, chopping back those weeds on a daily basis, that's really important. But if we were to just ignore our garden completely and then show up one day and be annoyed that there weren't any cucumbers growing in the garden, right, that makes no sense. Right? We'd never expect that to happen in our garden. And the same is really true of the mind. This is a process that takes time. And what we're doing is just showing up and doing the right things every day and allowing the results to take care of themselves. There's no point trying to hurry this. It's just a question of, doing the right things every day. So with that said, let's progress into meditation. I'm actually sitting on a chair today. And what I like to do if I'm sat on a chair is just cross my legs underneath the chair, but you can also have your feet flat on the ground, that's fine. What's important is that the lower body is relaxed. With the upper body, you want the spine to be erect so that you're exerting the mind, because if you lean back in the chair or if you're too tense, again, as we talked about and finding the middle, neither of these are going to be optimal for the mind. With the hand position, I like to put my right hand over my left like this, and just rest that in my lap. This is the way that Gotama Buddha taught it.
Max, can we get a full screen so that we can see you better? Thank you.
But there's no permanently correct way of doing this. All that matters here is that the body is comfortable so that we can get to the mind, we can train the mind. Okay, so I'm going to do some chanting, and then I'll guide us in meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhaṃ Bhagavantang Abhivademi Sawakkato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vicacaranang sampuno sakato loka vidu anuhutero purisa dhamma sati satatawa manuhusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, so you should be breathing through the nose. And just bring your attention gently to either the sensation of the air moving through the nose or the sound of the breath moving through the nose. as you do this, the mind is most likely going to want to run off after certain thoughts, maybe thoughts about the future, memories from the past. They may be pleasant or unpleasant. None of that really matters. Just bring the attention back to the sensation of the breath or the sound of the breath. Nice, relaxed amount of effort. No need to try too hard. Not trying to create any particular results. Just know that as you do this, you're training the mind to eliminate craving, cultivate mindfulness. There's nowhere else you need to be. There's no one who needs you at the moment. Just cut off all thoughts. Gently bring the attention back to the breath. As you do this, see if you can find the middle way. See if you can find the right amount of effort to apply. All there is to remember, cut off thoughts, bring the attention back to the breath. I'm going to let you carry on your own now. And I'll be back in a little while with some chanting to end the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhaṃ Bhagavantaṃ Abhivadeḥami Sawakkahato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghaṃ Namāmi Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vicacaranang sampuno Sakahato rohuka vihitu anuhuttero purisa dhammasati satatawa manuhu sanang Bhutto bhagavati. Okay, so just coming out of meditation in your own time. I'd be interested to know how that went for you all. Before I get to that, I thought I might just say something about expectations in meditation. Because I know from my own practice that it can be very tempting to try and look back and assess, and grade our meditation. How concentrated was that? How well did I do? This is all just more craving, desire, attachment to produce a certain result. It's the very thing we're working to remove in meditation. So however it went, no matter what the mind did, whether it was very relaxed, very concentrated, very focused, or whether it was bouncing around and you noticed it, that's all a successful meditation. There is no such thing as a bad meditation. As long as you showed up, did the meditation, and set the intention to cut off the thoughts, bring the attention back to the breath, then I think you can safely say to yourself that that was a successful meditation. And it's never going to be the same twice. And there'll be periods where you make significant progress and then you notice the mind's busy again. And whilst it can feel very nice sometimes, if we get a good concentrated meditation, we can get a lot of benefits from that. The object is not to create or pursue pleasant feelings, because that would be more craving. And so really what we're aiming to do here is to train the mind to let go of all that and be satisfied with what is. So on that basis, use the experience as a guide to know whether what you were doing was beneficial. but we do not need to try and produce a certain state, and we certainly won't be able to produce a certain state every single time. And if you found the meditation difficult, that's okay, because as we release attachment, there is inevitably going to be discontent feelings associated with that, because the mind is so used to having what it wants all the time. And if we bring it back and don't allow it to get what it wants all the time, well, it's going to fight back. It's going to kick up these feelings of potentially anger, sadness, boredom. That's completely normal. But when we see those for what they are, we can train the mind knowing that these are just the results of our craving, that they are impermanent, and that as long as we do the right things every day, we show up and we do our meditation, slowly over time, we will ebb and flow towards eliminating these discontent mind states over time. If we do the right things, it's just inevitable that this will happen, because we are in full control of the mind. If we are causing the discontentedness, then we can eliminate the discontentedness. And the way we do that is by practicing this whole path on a daily basis, including a daily consistent meditation practice. So no matter how it went, well done. Thank you for your practice. Hope it was useful. Let's go to the messages and see if there's any comments or questions.
Thank you, Max. Everything you were just saying there, Chantel agrees with you. She says, right. She agrees. And Carl is thanking you and everyone else for their time, and thanks for the meditation.
Wonderful. And thank both of you too, and thank everybody. This is a wonderful thing that you're doing for yourself and others and the wider world. I think there's a great relief in that all we need to do, if we really are interested in benefiting those around us, then the greatest thing we can do is sit down and focus on the breath by ourselves, right? This is, the Buddha said, the highest form of karma, or in other words, the action that can produce the very best results. And sure, we need to go out and do things to support ourselves and support our families. But isn't it nice to know that if what we're genuinely interested in is having a positive impact on those around us, the wider world, and our own mind state, then meditation is one of the absolute best things we can do with our time and our energy. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to keep up their practice daily. I'm sure many of you are already. And if you are currently meditating once a day, see if you can increase that to twice a day. I recently increased the amount of meditation I was doing, and found that even going from twice a day to 3 times a day most days, I still noticed a benefit from that increase. And this is what Gotama Buddha recommended. This is how he practiced. He practiced meditation in the morning, noon, and the evening. So that's what I aim to map, and I know that David's the same. So yeah, thank you all for your practice. If there are no more questions, then David, would you like to add any final words there or offer us some teachings?
So I'll just share this last 2 comments from 2 students that just came in. Linda says, wonderful insight, Max. Thank you. And Marcia says, thanks so much, Max. Very inspiring. So
that's very kind.
Looks like people are appreciating your sharing today, meditation, and appreciate you giving me a little bit of a break and giving you a chance to teach. So some of you may know that a year and a half ago, Max mentioned to me that he was interested to be a teacher. And at that time, my comments to him were, okay, well, let's see what happens. And I encouraged him to focus on his practice and ensuring that he learns and becomes a very good practitioner. So that's what he's really been focused on in the last 18 months and studying, is learning how to be a very good practitioner. Because in order to be a great teacher, you need to first be a great practitioner. So that's what Max has been working on in the last year and a half, learning. you guys may have just encountered Max in the last 6 months or 8 months or so through these group learning program and here online in Daily Wisdom. But Max and I go back to almost the beginning of 2019 where he first started learning. So he's working on being a very great practitioner and slowly starting to share some of the things that he's learned along the way. So we'll invite Max back at another time to maybe share some more insight and help him start to kind of get his teaching legs under him and kind of learn how to be a teacher and answer questions and all these kind of things. So thank you for your dedication, Max, and thank you for choosing to share your wisdom and insight that you've learned on the path so far.
I'm very glad to, and thank you all for practicing with us today, and I'm glad it was useful for you all.
Yeah, so a little bit of impermanence for you guys that you're used to seeing David teach, and now Max has done a little bit of teaching. So hopefully you guys mind where it wasn't craving David, and you guys were comfortable with having Max, and you were able to accept that impermanence, and your mind wasn't shaken up by this bit of impermanence that was introduced into our learning sessions today. So thank you all for joining. And on Sunday, we are going to be learning chapter 14, which is true love, love without attachment. And this is where we're going to really dive into relationships, helping you to understand why relationships have been so difficult for you in the past, perhaps. If you haven't been practicing true love, then relationships with life partners, with children, with friends and parents and coworkers is probably one of the most challenging things that you encounter on a day-by-day basis. And there is guidance in these teachings about how to develop relationships without attachment, which will lead to successful relationships for you, where you won't experience discontentedness in the relationships that you're experiencing now. So you can actually train your mind to practice true love, love without attachment, and then you can start moving your practice in that direction and start cleaning up some of the things that you're doing in your current relationships, and you'll see much more peacefulness amongst the people that you interact with, whether it's life partners, children, parents, siblings, coworkers, friends, anybody in your life. You can be practicing true love. And the beauty in practicing true love is it's a love that is unconditional, and therefore it's essentially permanent. Even though all these other things in life are impermanent, once you get to a point where you're actually practicing true love, it can be a permanent love. But right now, what you might be doing is you might be falling in love with people and you might be falling out of love with people. But this isn't actually true love. But we're going to explore that on Sunday and help you understand true love, love without attachment. And then, of course, next week on Wednesday, we'll be doing loving kindness meditation to help eradicate hatred, anger, ill will, and all the lesser versions of that as well. So between now and then, have a really wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And I'll see you on Sunday at 9 o'clock or next Wednesday at 9 o'clock Thai time. Have a wonderful day. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.